Welcome to Firm Founders Accountants Roundtable. And I am so excited today to talk about creating a niche for yourself, for your firm, and to really focus on an industry, a service. And two special guests today are Tonya Schulte.
Yep.
Oh, good, I got it right. And Jamie Finfrock. Jamie, did I
Yep.
get that right?
That's correct.
I am so excited to talk to both of you because you have built successful firms by working in a specific industry. And Tanya, I want to start with you. Tell us about yourself and your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Tanya Schulte. I founded the Profit Constructors, and we founded that. So in February, we celebrated our 7th year anniversary of being that completely construction industry focused firm. And we never did go down the generalist path. We were always on that construction niche path. And the reason is because I started working in the construction accounting private space. I worked for several small companies and then into some larger corporate environments in construction accounting since 1998. So it's all I've ever done.
Wow. Okay. That I can see that transition. That makes sense. Jamie, tell us about you and your company.
Well, my company is Finfrock and Co. Inc., so named after myself, of course. So I've been doing accounting and tax services for a little over 20 years now, and I worked my way up over the years in various corporate jobs. Eventually, ended up working for the IRS as a tax auditor, and then for the Department of Defense as an auditor. So I did get some specialized training in those particular fields, especially auditing government contractors. So now my firm that I have, I eventually decided to go off on my own, which was pretty crazy. But I've been in my own firm now since 2017. And we specialize in government contractors because there just isn't a large market out there for them, and it's a very specialized type of accounting that has to be done. I like to say it's the Internal Revenue Code on steroids because it takes tax law and it takes it to the nth degree of all these additional restrictions and everything that you have to go through in order to have a contract with the government.
Yeah.
So I've taken my knowledge from the government as an auditor, and now I use my powers for good, and I help out my clients.
I love it that you're using your power for good. So I have to tell you, Jamie, what you do, I have been searching for at least 2 years to find someone with what you do. And there is almost, I couldn't find anyone. I've been looking, so we'll talk later. So, okay. So I kind of understand you both actually worked in the field first. Yeah. And it was kind of this natural transition, and you never had, but weren't people referred to you weren't like, oh, my brother-in-law has a business. It's a big business. They're doing $5-10 million a year, but they make widgets. Can't you help them? And what did you say? I mean, that's kind of a big business to turn down. Tonya, what did you do? Did you just go, nah? Or did you have that heart pull? Like, oh God, all right, maybe we could do it.
So I think that we have had some referrals that have come our way that were for outside of the industry that we said we were specializing in. None of them were ever very large, right? So they were a little bit easier to turn down. It was a little bit easier to say, hey, that's not really what we do. I will say that I think there have been times where I thought, are we doing the right thing? Is this niching thing the right thing? And I'll tell you, interestingly enough, even though it did not affect our business, one of my more moments where I was doing some soul searching about is niching the thing that we should be doing was during COVID. So even though it really did not affect us, and although all of our businesses were considered essential, our clients were able to continue operations and nothing much changed. And we dove all in with them to help them get PPPs, IDLs if they needed it. We did whatever we could in order to keep them well-funded and being able to move forward. But I had some friends who were in other niches, like say restaurant and bar, and their businesses were basically folding at that time. And so, yes, there have been times where I've questioned, is this the right thing to do? But I always come back around to, I know it inside and out. Our team knows it inside and out. And the few times that we've even stepped out of our comfort zone and maybe tried to learn several new apps, we tend to focus on the subcontractor and trades industries. And we do have a couple of GCs and home builders on our roster, but when we try to step outside of what we know really well and learn some more specialized apps, the team struggles. And so every time I just come back to marketing is easier, tech stack is easier, processes are so much more refined when we're just focused on what we can do and what we can do really well.
I love that. All right, Jamie, I got to ask you the same question. Have you been offered things outside of, your specialty? And what did you do?
Yeah, for sure. I think initially when we were starting our firm and looking for new business, that was more of a big deal. And I did take on some, smaller entities just, when you're first starting out and you're trying to get your name out there. But after a while of, being in the government contractor field and having that specialty, your name starts to get passed around to everybody who knows somebody who's in that field and really needs an accountant, because you can't just, go on Facebook and say who has a good accountant for government contracting. So eventually, I just started getting referrals. I haven't done any advertising or marketing at all in probably 5 years. Because I haven't needed to. It's just been steady, ongoing referrals for new business coming in constantly. Because once somebody finds the accountant that they love, that does a good job, and they pass their audits and everything's going well, they want to tell all their friends, right?
Yeah, totally true.
Yeah. So we have turned away some clients here and there, but as Tanya said, most of them were smaller. And they could go with any accounting firm, really. They didn't need a specialty service. And, it's better for them anyways, because in a specialty service, what comes with that is specialty rates. You're paying a premium for that additional special knowledge. And, they could get a much cheaper rate with somebody who didn't have that specialty, and they'd save money.
And they don't need the specialty that you've taken years and years to cultivate.
Right.
And I think that's something that people forget, is that when you do have a specialty, you do charge more. And it is because of those years and years of training that you've done and dive deep into it. So do you have any advice for anybody who's thinking about starting this? So, I know there's lots of people who think about it. And Tanya, you brought up such a good point. People who did restaurants during the pandemic, that was terrible.
Yeah.
So many people restaurants lost their businesses, accounting firms lost their business. So do you have any advice for people? Tanya, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any, if somebody wants to start, do you have any advice for them?
I think there's a couple things. I think consider carefully, right? So there's a lot of questions to ask. You brought up something that has been mentioned by both Jamie and myself. She and I have years of experience doing these things that we do, right? And so maybe if you're just getting started and you're just kind of like, well, maybe I'll start a bookkeeping business. You don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of any particular industry, right? And so I have seen quite a few of my friends that started out as generalists, and then as their firms grew, they came to understand, hey, I really love working with my retail clients, and I'm not so enthused about working with the construction folks, or vice versa, however that may play out. So I think one thing is just, it's okay to be a generalist. I never think that that's wrong or a bad choice. So but within that journalist or generalist journey, you can often find what you love and then just lean into that. And again, start building your tech stack around that and start building up your own expertise in that area. So that's the first thing. But I also think that one of the things that our firm has recently done, we're starting a new venture. We're kind of co-firming with other firms. And so we're working side by side to do client work with some of these other firms. And we found that each one of the firm owners that we've started partnering with brings their own different levels of expertise in different areas. And so whereas my firm in the past would maybe have turned down something that was completely outside of our area of expertise, we're now able to take on those clients. So that's something that's been interesting and fascinating for us. But within your own firm, there may come a time at which you could say, well, we'll start a separate division. So you could then have separate marketing channels. So it just depends on, how big do you want to grow? If you just want to be a solopreneur and you just want to do that one thing, go do that one thing. But if you want to grow and scale, you could reach a point, I believe, where you could hire a specialist in inventory and go hard and fast after inventory clients. So I think there's multiple ways that you can look at it.
Okay. Tanya, do you have a team? Do you have employees or?
I do. So we have, now I have to count. We have five people that work for us internally.
Okay.
And then if I count my external co-firming team, there's actually about 9 of us all across the country from Arizona to Florida. So
Great. Okay. So Jamie, do you have any advice for someone who is thinking about specializing?
Well, I completely agree with everything that Tanya said. For our industry, the government contracting, during the pandemic, for example, we surged forward. I mean, there was so much additional business. If you think about, try to think of recession-proof industries and what are the things that are going to have to continue even when everything else has to stop. Well, the government can't stop. So yeah, there are certain industries where, you can't go without it. And so when we hit COVID, it was like, a rocket went off in our firm because we had to, help out with all the PPPs, of course, but then I had clients that were doing proposals for various agencies within the government that were all looking for solutions for COVID. So I had one client that deals in plasma technology, and they were, looking at R&D ways to find a way to spray clean and disinfect. And then I had another client that made flu tests. So they converted their entire operation to make COVID tests and grew from a 50-person company to a 500-person company in 6 months. So we ended up negotiating a buyout and acquisition for them with a huge multinational company, all during that year and a half of COVID. So while like everybody was, learning how to bake bread or doing different things, we were just in the fast lane nonstop, working constantly. So, when you're looking at a niche, it is important to try to look at, what are the risks in the different industries, and can you think of a situation where maybe that niche wouldn't be so great. Restaurants are great, and I've worked in that niche before for CPA firms that only did restaurants, and unfortunately, those CPA firms did very poorly during COVID and during a pandemic because restaurants aren't recession-proof. Sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking about one thing you were saying, and it made me think I have a really good friend who niches in e-com, and it was the same thing for her. Whereas if she had been just all brick and mortar retail, she would have been having a struggle. But for her e-commerce clients, everything just blew up, right? Everybody was buying everything online. So she had this experience you did, Jamie, that her business just skyrocketed during COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So, and another CPA firm I worked for years ago, they specialize in doctor's offices. So guess what? Healthcare. During a pandemic, doctor's offices were extremely busy. They couldn't shut down. So,
Yeah.
just thinking about recession-proof type industries when you are trying to choose a niche, and then, the co-firm thing, I think that Tanya brought up is really great too, because I have a similar situation with other firms that do more generalized bookkeeping and accounting. Maybe they do IT and, other types of services. And when they come across a client that has a government contract and they don't have anybody on their team, they can reach out to us and contract with us. We provide that specialization to them, but it's still their client. They're
Yep.
still,
Wow.
doing all the general work, and we're only focusing on those pieces. But it's really an industry where you need training, because you can't just go to college and take a college course in these specialized fields. You really need experience. So it's important to find training programs, and be trained by the right people, of course, on how to do this and really get under your belt if you're going to take on the niche. Because if you start doing it and you're not any good, or you do the wrong thing, it's going to blow up in your face, unfortunately. So
Wow.
getting a good training program is extremely important. So you have to invest the time in that.
That's a really
And
good point. I was going to say, you reminded me, I actually, one of the first steps I took when I wanted to start this firm, Jamie, was I went and I just started knocking on doors of CPAs in our local area who were advertising themselves as construction specialist CPAs. And so I was walking through doors saying, listen, I'm going to do the bookkeeping. I'll make all of it simple for you at tax time. Could we share referrals? And some of them laughed me out of their building. And one of them, we've become a really good referral partner with. I still love them. They actually ended up taking over our taxes. They do the taxes for our firm and my husband and I. But I remember one of the CPAs in that firm really kind of quizzed me on percentage of completion accounting and how to prepare WIP report. And at the end of the day, he goes, you really know your stuff. And I said, yeah, and the crazy part is I didn't finish my college accounting degree. He goes, that's okay. They don't give you a degree in WIP reports.
It's
For
totally
sure.
true. And I love the point that you both make, that it's you have to know what you're doing. And so I guess I have another question for you. If you were going to hire somebody who is in a niche market, how do you know they know what they're doing? Because and I know this happens to both of you all the time, where I meet up with a potential new client and they say, yeah, I already have a bookkeeper, but my accountant has to clean up the books all the time, or, and I'm like, oh, okay. So did you vet them? Like, how did you, so for the construction industry, like, what good questions could somebody ask to know that, you really know what you're doing? I guess ask about WIP reporting because
Well, yeah, I think so. Your question is really telling, right? Because especially small business owners who are just really busy doing the work, they don't know what they don't know. And it's very hard for them to understand when someone just walks through the door, especially if they have a super impressive resume. It's really hard for them to understand if that person truly knows construction accounting or not. So yes, I would say, ask them if they know about job costing. What do they know about job costing? How would they design a chart of accounts? So there's all those kinds of things that you can ask. But again, as a small business owner,
I know.
it's so
How are
hard.
you going to?
Yeah. One of our initiatives is that when we start with a client, we make it a mandatory thing that we will have a once monthly meeting with them, because all of our small business owners typically come with a limited knowledge of how to read and understand their financials. And so it's just something that we're totally on board with wanting to do for them, which is to teach them how to read those financials. Like at the end of the day, if we're no longer around and they're going to hire someone else, I want them to be able to, at that point, read through the financials and understand if that person truly does know what they're doing. So even from the very beginning, when we do a discovery with them, we go right back through all of the discovery stuff and tell them what we found that was or wasn't correct and why it was or wasn't correct. Because at the very beginning, we want them to see these are the things that are being done really well in your books, and these are the things that need cleanup in your books, and this is why. So that's just a mandatory thing with us, is that you have to be willing to learn more about your financials if you want to work with us.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. A big part of our job is educating the client, especially, a lot of small companies get into contracting because they worked at a company that had government contracts, and now they've decided, oh, I can just, make money on my own and start my own company and get these contracts, right?
Yeah.
And not to knock the engineers, but I feel like sometimes they're the ones that always think that they can do everything on their own. And that accounting is no big deal.
Oh,
So because they're math, they know math, right? They're excellent at numbers because they're
they're
engineers,
process driven.
Right.
And usually they're process driven. So I do have to say engineers
accounting is different.
is very different. And government accounting is very different than anything else I've ever seen.
Yeah. So a big part of what we do is educating the client, helping them understand what are the rules that they have to follow, what they can and can't do. They still have to be involved in the process. We're not just QuickBooks bookkeepers where we're importing a bank statement and booking it blindly. We tell them they need to upload their documents. We book from source documents. You have to have written policies and procedures because that's the first thing the auditor is going to ask for. I'm taking that mindset from being an auditor and then turning that around and saying, all right, you want to pass an audit because government contractors are audited regularly. They have to pass audits in order to get their contracts or keep their contracts. So if you're not able to pass an audit, you're not going to be able to make a whole lot of money in your industry. So that's what we do is we prepare them for that. And they have to be the ones to answer those questions and provide the documents when it comes time to meet with the auditor.
So you provide education on knowing that they have to have all those things and why they have to have them, because it's going to end up making them money if they if they're audit proof. That's fabulous.
It's their business. They should understand what's going on. Like if you look at fraud statistics, the highest percentage of people who commit fraud are the CPAs and the accountants because they have access to all the money. And when you have a small business owner that has no clue as to what's going on in their financials and they're not paying attention, they can get taken very easily. And unfortunately, I see that a lot. I end up having small business owners that come to me and we identify a situation that was potentially fraud or maybe flat out is. And we have to, counsel them through that and explain to them what's going on. But it's their money. They need to know what's going on. It's their business. It's their livelihood. If something bad happens, that's their life that they've invested in.
In a similar vein, like we're consistently teaching clients why they need to have a WIP schedule. And for the most part, if they come to us saying, hey, someone told us that we need a WIP schedule and you guys are the ones that can help us figure out how to build that, we will help them do that. And typically it's for some sort of compliance purpose. They need to do a pre-qual for a large job, or they, that now they're being forced by the IRS to switch from accrual up to percentage of completion accounting, whatever the situation may be. It's always, not always, but typically compliance related. But similar to what you're saying, Jamie, yes. Then once we've gotten them to the point where we can produce that form and hand it over to whomever is requesting it, then we start to talk about, yes, but the main reason that you want to prepare this WIP is so you can better manage your company by utilizing all the data that's on here. So it's like all hand in hand, right? Like, okay, fine, we'll help you get to that compliance point. But at the same time, the reason that these reports exist is really so that you have insight into your company and how to manage it best.
Right. Yeah. I mean, really the overall goal should be to help your clients succeed and grow in their own companies, right? And in order to do that, you have to have a good control over the financials and know what's going on, be compliant, meet your needs, and, get the contracts or, get the bids, whatever it is that you're trying to get.
Yeah, that's why our tagline, if you can see it on the sign behind me, we help you run with the big dogs. It's a huge part of that is like what you were saying, Jamie. They're so often coming out of the trade, out of whatever they saw. They see that someone else has been successful doing it. And again, they think, how hard could it be? Right? Like this person knows how to do the work really well and they've grown this great business. And so they just take off and run with it, not ever thinking about all the complexity of what running that business will actually entail.
Right. And I've even, circling back to the question about how do you know, the bookkeeper and who's doing your accounting is actually knowledgeable. I've even developed a small 20 question test that I
Oh,
give to my
nice.
clients to use when they're hiring someone to do their bookkeeping. If they just need somebody to come in and help them out in the office, I'm like, well, let's see if they have some basic accounting 101 knowledge at least. Can they figure out debits and credits? Do they know liabilities and assets and what the differences are? And, that basic stuff that are really the building blocks for everything else.
That's very true. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many people have told me that they've been working with QuickBooks Online for over 20 years. And I say, really? Did you invent it? Because yeah. So I think that's a fabulous idea to give that 20 question test. We have them do an online test and have them record themselves so that we can tell, like, how quickly do they do it? Do they know where things are?
Right.
I mean, because if you use a product all the time, it takes you 2 seconds to get through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, back to something that you had said earlier too, Jamie, about on the educational side and find a good training program. That's actually, again, another benefit of this co-firming thing that we've really been investing a lot of time in. We're bringing all of our co-firming partners together and doing trainings together. So we'll bring all of the teams from all of the firms together. The very first one that we did, we're doing them once a month now. And the very first one that we did in January, we actually ended up having to skip February, but we did WIP training, right? Because there were a lot of people on the teams that were like, hey, I see that you guys are doing these WIPs. I see some of you are really good at it. I don't know anything about it. I want to learn more. And so we just got everybody from all the firms in one Zoom room and did a 4-hour training on WIP. And so we're going to continue forward with that, where we can, each one of us, again, can bring our expertise and our knowledge, and everybody on the team is then benefiting from the training on those various things. So it's really opening up new worlds for everyone across all of our firms.
Yeah, for sure. We've been training a few other smaller firms as well. When we take on, a new client or sharing it with another accounting firm, we're helping those accountants learn, the government contract accounting as well and getting up to speed. And, it works out better for us if they're doing the actual entries in the system, right? So we train them on how to use the specialized systems that are needed and, how to book those entries and where things need to be entered and how to update the policies and procedures. So they're learning that knowledge from us and then taking that and using it probably to, take on other clients and do more work and help their company grow as well. And which is great because there's really a huge need for more accountants in this industry because we're swamped. It's crazy.
So how do you so how do you structure this? So you're both talking about working with other firms. Are you giving them like a percentage of it? Are they giving you a percentage of it? How, Tanya, are you working with other firms that also provide accounting for construction firms, but just in different areas or different ways, and you're figuring out to do it together? Is that how it is?
Yes. So
okay.
we have it started on our end, I think somewhat similar to what Jamie was saying. I think, Jamie, you were saying some people brought work to you because they didn't have that expertise. In our case, we lost a key team member, and I was a little bit freaked out because we had just signed one of the largest contracts that we'd ever had. And so I went, oh my goodness, how is the team going to manage all the work we already have, plus take on this new client, and this key team member just left. And so I reached out into my Roundtable Labs group that I'm a part of and said, I need help. And Dave Kersing, his firm name is called Capavario, stepped up. He was a solopreneur at the time, but he really wanted to grow. And he said, Tanya, let me come help you out. And I basically trained him on and handed over that one big, large client to him so that I could just keep other things going in the vein that they were. And it worked out so well that probably 4 months into the partnership of working with him, he was able to hire another person and then eventually hire a third person. And we handed over more work to him. So we will own the engagement. And then we subcontract it out to him. And we have created a sliding scale of pay wherein if we feel like we did the WIP report that month because his team wasn't up to speed on how to do WIPs, then we can lower the rate that we're going to pay him down to a specific base rate that he and I agreed upon. But once his team is up to speed and they're totally fully taking on the whip for that client, maybe they're doing more and more work over time, that sliding scale goes up to a maximum so that he and I both are still taking a portion of that client's work. And we're always working together all the time. I think that's super important to note too. Like, we're in a lot of meetings all the time. We're making sure that the clients are being taken care of. And we now actually have hired, and so that's Capivario. Then we have a couple of other firms that we're working with as well. And we have hired on our team a quality assurance manager who's actually going to be the one that manages that program and is making sure that all of those parts and pieces are functioning correctly. Mm-hmm. And recently, Capivario, Dave Kirsting's firm, brought us a client and said, listen, we've been working for this client for quite some time. They've had multiple turnover of internal bookkeepers. They're a construction client. We feel like you have more of the expertise, Tanya. We'd like to bring them into the fold. So they're going to own that engagement. And we're just going to look at our expertise. So yeah, now it's flowing both ways.
That's great. We brought in a client success manager to make sure that everything that happens for the client and the team is all good and everybody's happy.
Yes.
Jamie, how do you work with, you said you have some smaller companies that you're working with. Is it the same way? Are you like bringing them in and I think you said they own the engagement and they bring you in?
Yeah, a lot of times they own the engagement and they need the extra help. So they're contracting with us directly, and then, they can bill the client whatever their agreement is for billing the client. But, our agreement is with them and we bill them for our time based on our agreement with them. We do have some situations where we own the engagement and it's our client, but we don't have time for the bookkeeping work. So, what we do is we then contract with that other firm who does more generalized bookkeeping, but we've trained them on what to do and how to do it correctly. They handle that, they bill us, and then we bill the client our rate because, of course, we're still reviewing everything that other firm does.
Oh, absolutely.
We're still providing additional consultation and advice on top of the actual bookkeeping work. So, we're still able to make, profit, I guess, off of that because, we're billing based on our agreement. So it can kind of go both ways. And then, even with ours too, like we layer in the taxes too, because I have the IRS auditor background as well. So a big issue that our clients run into a lot of times is tax advice for government contractors is different than tax advice for any other company out there. There are a lot of pieces of tax advice that CPAs give that are the typical things to do, but they don't always work for government contractors. So,
it's good to know.
Yeah.
Really so I don't think a lot of companies know that if you do government contracting, that your tax advice needs to be different and you need to have someone who specializes in it.
Yeah, knowing the differences and because some tax advice out there, the traditional tax advice could actually hurt your contract. So if you're following that CPA's advice on doing that particular thing, you could end up costing yourself money on your government contract and not make as much money as what you could have if you had done things a little bit differently. So, we combine that knowledge in our firm and offer that, kind of holistic view. Even though tax season can be extremely stressful and I really don't want to have to do tax returns, but it ends up being part of the tax strategy that, you're looking at and you're consulting with your client, because not only does it help their contracts to do things a certain way, it helps them on their taxes, saves them money that way. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit more in taxes in order to make a lot more on your contracts. So,
and that takes a while to explain that to them too.
Exactly.
To get them to understand.
Everybody's like, I don't want to pay taxes. I'm like, but if you see how this works, right? Like, for this little bit of money you're going to pay, you're going to make so much more.
That's excellent advice. It really is. I had no idea. And I think that a lot of people don't know, because in some of the clients that we work with, they have some government contracts and some private contracts. So it's good to know that they really need to get that special advice. Are either one of you women business certified, women owned certified?
No.
Are your businesses? Have you thought
I
about
haven't done the
doing?
certification, but I've thought about it. Yeah.
Okay. Tanya, have you thought about it?
It's been brought up, but it's always one of those things where I'm like, yeah, we'll do that when we get time, right?
I was just introduced to someone who she's a leader in that area, and she has said her business has been around 3 years and it has exploded because of it.
Mhm.
And I wonder if government contracts, because they probably are required to have X amount of minorities and diversity
So
in
I was
their
just gonna,
contracts.
yeah, I was gonna throw that out there. We actually, one of our clients here in Arizona is a mechanical contractor who does a lot of government work and is a certified woman-owned business. And both of those really boosted their business at the very beginning. Now they're branching out. They're doing a lot of other private contracts as well. But yeah, that was both of those things helped them kind of get a good start at the very beginning.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a few clients where the wives were brought in as 51% owners just to be able to get that certification. And I mean, they
Yeah.
are involved, obviously.
Yeah.
The wives are actually probably what keep the wheels on behind the scenes, even though the husbands are the ones out there doing the work for a lot of these contracts. The wives are really running the show. And
Yeah.
so they end up being 51% owners and get that
Mhm.
women-owned business
Right.
certification.
I laugh because yes, that is true. It is a husband and wife scenario for this particular client, but at the same time, they have 3 daughters and they do plan on handing their business down to the daughters. There are no sons involved. So at the end of the day, it will be fully woman-owned business. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
I think the more women-owned businesses we have, the better off we're going to be overall.
And
I
how
really
exciting
do.
for that to be something that's happening in the construction business right now too.
I love
And
it.
government contracting.
Yeah, which are male-dominated fields, both of them.
Yeah.
We have to encourage our girls to be engineers and electricians and, get out there and own these companies.
I just went to a succession planning conference a few weeks ago, and there were a number of different panelists on this panel. And they were all talking about different ways of handing your company off. So, there was like employee owned and different things. And one of them was family transition, and it was a father to a daughter. And the daughter was cracking me up. It's a construction company. And she was like, "Oh, my dad and I went to bat. Like I was negotiating with him about." I love it. I absolutely love that.
Nice.
She was raised in this construction company. She was raised around this male-dominated industry, and she was like, "I'm not going to let anybody take advantage of me. Not even you, Dad. This is the way it's going to be." I love it. She was sweet
Nice.
about it. She loves her dad, right? But she was like, "Oh no, we had some talks."
That's very cool. I love it. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I feel like I have learned a lot about learning niche markets and figuring things out and having some expertise along the way, which will help us do this. If anybody would like to reach out to you, we can, Rachel and Tosin, if they want to put your information on this when they repost it, they'll be able to reach out to you and get more information. And I will actually be reaching out to both of you because Tanya, I think I have a client for you, and Jamie, I need your help.
Okay.
But it was great talking with both of you. Thank you for being here today, and I look forward to catching up with both of you.
Yes,
Great.
thanks
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.